welcome to the Moonshine Jesus Show. If you're joining us live, you are one of the lucky ones. We are airing very early on this Halloween day, frankly, to fit my schedule so I can do some Halloweeny, spooky stuff later in the day. But we are glad that you have joined us here. A reminder that we're brought to you by progressivechristianity.org. We hope you'll go check them out. And don't forget to check us out on Facebook, where you can follow us, get all the previous shows, learn more about us there. And speaking of us, I want to mention the other part of us, other than me. That would be my buddy Caleb. What's going on, Caleb? How are you?
I've heard of him. Yeah, I'm doing great.
Yeah.
Great. Happy Halloween, Mark.
Happy Halloween, man. That's we're doing something as close as we could figure out quickly. Last show, something a little spooky. We're doing Last Night in Soho, which is kind of a psychological thriller with ghosts and all kinds of interesting things. So we're going to get to all of that. But I am curious. So you were gracious and let us do this show early. But one of our themes is always to have a drink. And so I'm curious on a lot of levels. It's early for you. It's also like Last Night in Soho, so it's hard to find a themed drink there. But it's Halloween too. So I'm curious to see what direction you went in.
Yeah, there were some interesting possibilities, but it is 9:45 here in San Diego, so I'm not drinking any alcohol. I've got a mocktail this morning, and it's called. So I went with a Halloween drink, themed drink, but the color of this drink made me think of like a neon glow, like Soho, and like the poster. So it's called It's a little monster is the name of it, but it's got this purple-ish red kind of glow, and it made me think of the poster there. So it's 4 ounces of club soda, an ounce of rosemary simple syrup, and a little bit of lime juice, and some food coloring to give it that glow.
To give that nice glow.
Yes.
I like the direction you went in. It might just be that you and I have been doing too many shows together here, because I also went with a Halloween theme.
Okay. Yeah.
I also went with a drink that, if properly made, and I'm not sure I properly made it, has a glow to it like the neon.
Okay.
And it's called it's Halloween theme. And it's since I'm in the afternoon, I picked a drink called Death in the Afternoon, and it is 1 part absinthe. It's supposed to be a little greener glow than you can see there. It is 1 part absinthe, 4 parts champagne, and a little simple sugar to go with it. So, cheers, and here's to a great show, sir.
Cheers.
Woo! That's got. Oh, there's a lot going on there. All right.
We'll get you a kick to it.
There's quite a kick. Well, we'll get you on the other side of the break.
Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Won't you shine?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show, where today we are talking about Last Night in Soho. This is a show that contains spoilers, so if you haven't seen Last Night in Soho, you're going to find out an awful lot about it as you listen to the Moonshine Jesus Show today. But that's okay, because Last Night in Soho is a show about an aspiring fashion designer who is mysteriously able to enter the 1960s, where she encounters a dazzling wannabe singer. But the glamour is not all it appears to be, and the dreams of the past start to crack and splinter into something darker. Now, we picked this one because it's Halloween and it's a psychological thriller, and we wanted something that's a little bit creepy. It's a little bit outside of what we often talk about here, which is sci-fi, fantasy kind of stuff. And I don't think Mark and I, either one, are for horror movies too much. We're not big into that, are we, Mark?
No,
and so
I definitely am not.
You're not, yeah. How do you like psychological thrillers, though? What do you think about psychological thrillers?
I do tend to like psychological thrillers, and when it comes to horror movies, there's arguments of whether psychological thrillers should fit in it. I think they should, only because that lets me be able to say I like some horror movies.
there are some that are okay, as long as you're,
but I tend to like a well done, like Hitchcock psychological thriller, which I feel like a lot of this ended up feeling like it had a little of that Hitchcock feel of how it was, how they used the psychology and the way they presented the story. I mean, how about you? Are you into psychological thrillers?
I do like psychological thrillers. Again, if they're good and if they're kind of fun, then it can be kind of exciting to watch those. And so I do enjoy one. But here's my bigger question: did you like this particular one, Mark? What did you think about Last Night in Soho?
I ended up with very mixed take on it. Parts of it were absolutely amazing, particularly the filming of it and the editing of it and the way. I mean, I can think of this one shot where the main characters, I'm going to say, are dancing, and you've got Matt Smith's character Jack is dancing with Sandy, who's the 1960s person that Eloise ends up going back to and visiting and seeing, and Eloise and Sandy are switching in and out almost seamlessly dancing with Jack, and there's no camera cut. Matter of fact, I think there was only one camera trick in terms of there was a moment where they kind of morphed while they were dancing. Alice, like he was in between them and the lens, but they had these beautiful seamless where he would dip them out of camera, and when they came back, it was the other person, and it was a scene. So there's parts of it I thought were incredibly well done, just from a filmmaking point of view. Is beautifully shot. It was strange. This was definitely a slow burn, right?
It was
like the first 30 minutes or so, you're kind of going, oh well. Not only am I not sure where this is going, but there's not much story being set up here. At least it didn't feel like it.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I agree about that. I like the camera and the camera angles, cinematography, and the grittiness of Soho in the 60s and even today that it captures. I think was fun. But yeah, you're right. It is kind of a slow burn. And then once it starts burning, there's some inconsistency that makes it a little difficult. For instance, I'm not quite sure what the rules are of Eloise and her relationship with dead folks or the past. Because like at first it seems like it's going to be a Sixth Sense kind of thing. Like she can see dead people in mirrors or something.
Right. She sees her mom. We get that real early on.
Right. Yeah. She sees her mom in a mirror.
Who committed suicide. Yeah.
And who doesn't seem to talk. Right. Is just there in the mirror.
Just stands and stares at her.
Right. Then that's pretty much it. And then all of a sudden she starts having these flashbacks when she's sleeping. That seems like it's a real person. I don't know. Am I too critical of this, Mark? Or
I think I know exactly what you're saying. I feel like they kind of they gave you the possibility of explaining it, but they waited until the very end to do it. We find out, like again, spoilers all over the place here. We find out that the lady that she's renting a room from is Sandy, who she kept seeing in these 1960s flashbacks. And not only is she Sandy, but this is very much a show about misogyny. And we learned that Sandy had enough of it and started killing off these guys that she was being forced into really prostitution with. And she is killing them and putting them in the walls of the house.
Yes.
And for me, that's kind of your explanation, is that Eloise seems to be somehow psychically connected with the dead. And in the place that she is staying, she is literally surrounded by the energy of the dead. And so it
Yeah.
seems to me at her house, her mom was kind of absent and not there a lot, and probably the body was buried in a cemetery. So she has these kind of removed, quiet, not interactive visions of mom. But then when she gets into this upstairs bedroom, she starts having these massive, like very realistic, so realistic that she has physical. She comes back sometimes with a physical reality from those visions, like when
Yeah.
Jack,
The hickey.
the hickey. So to me, I kind of feel like that was trying to be implied, but it was too much. There was too much of it being implied rather than giving us some real hints. If that's what they were trying to reveal to us. I don't know.
Well, thank you for explaining that to me, Mark. I
don't know if
still
that's
have questions. I still have questions. I need more explanation here. And it's okay. So I get that. I think that's right. Except that whenever she breaks the mirror in the because in the dream world, the world of the dead, the 1960s, it seems like that then shatters this veil between her life and the life she's encountering in the dreams. She begins to see people as she's awake in the waking hours. But then there's also this moment where the older Sandy is chasing Eloise at the end of the movie, and Jack's like ghost is there and slaps Sandy, and she seems to feel that. How is it that Sandy is who's not psychically connected to the dead, who's lived there for years and years? How is it that all of a sudden this ghost is able to physically assault Sandy? Do you have an explanation?
I don't have an explanation.
Psychic connections, or her psychic connection is so strong, it manifests Jack, or
no. I mean, I was thinking kind of as it was going on that this was just another psychic vision where she, after she broke that glass, started. Anne had been. After she had broke that glass and then was drugged in some way by Sandy, and we don't really know what the drug was. It was to knock her out or to have psychological. To me, it was her real life and the psychic vision life kind of falling in together as she started putting everything together and realizing why she was having all these strong visions. Now, as to why Jack was able to actually slap the older Sandy, I don't know. And I would go, maybe that's bad filmmaking. Maybe it's once again some hidden meaning that they weren't revealing in any way that was helpful. I don't know. It
was interesting, but it was fun to watch, and I think there were a lot of things that were represented here that I think that even before we get to the theopolitical stuff, I think there were some good things that we learned from this. For instance, she's seeing this person that initially Eloise is, and she initially really is kind of enamored with this life. She's enamored with the 1960s, and she all of a sudden in her dreams is getting to live vicariously through this blonde woman with a lot of confidence and a lot of style, and she's really excited about it, and her life kind of seems perfect to Eloise. But the life isn't perfect.
No.
And to me, that said a lot about how it is that we view other people and how we view their lives. And, with social media in particular, I think we can see people's lives and we can see people present the Photoshop versions of their lives where everything seems absolutely perfect. And that's often not true. Did you see that theme or some
Yeah,
other themes
I
in there,
definitely
Mark, that spoke to you?
no, that theme in particular I thought stood out really loudly because they work really hard at setting up how much Eloise was kind of enamored with the 60s and how
Mhm.
perfect the 60s were in her mind. And I do think that's one of the parts of this storytelling is to try to break down that mythology that we all do tend to carry around when we begin to idealize things without actually experiencing them in their fullness. And so we see her be at first being when she's psychologically transported, however that really is, into the 60s. She's very excited and just kind of bright eyed and like, wow. And then we see it start to unravel piece by piece. And in particular, and this is something I know we're going to spend probably a lot of the theopolitical section on, she starts seeing that this idealized version is so off because of the rampant misogyny and how it traps people and literally takes their lives away. So I thought that part was particularly fascinating, and I really loved that theme.
Yeah, I did too, and I did think that it was it was an interesting plot twist to see that she was there with Sandy. I didn't necessarily see that coming until later on in the film, and I also didn't see the other twist necessarily that the guy who was following Eloise. I thought it was an older version of Jack. I mean, they set that up
Right.
pretty hard for
They
us
did,
to
yeah.
think that.
They
But,
definitely wanted you to.
they definitely did. I mean, cutting from an image of Jack to the old guy. I mean, it's
Right.
they set it up in that way, but I didn't see him being the vice cop, and I thought that was an interesting piece of filmmaking, and it did. I think make us question a lot of assumptions that we hold about people, and I thought that part of this movie was particularly strong. But agree, there were some issues, but all in all, I kind of liked it. What's your assessment?
I agree. I liked it. I didn't love it. I liked it, but I will say this: the way it ended, particularly with the reveal of older Sandy, I very much am probably going to go back and rewatch this show, knowing that. I think it would be fascinating to watch how that plays out with that reveal now, knowing that the young Sandy and the older woman that she's renting from are the same person. It's really fascinating. And there's lots of things buried in here. For instance, remember when she was in the library researching to trying to find about a woman who might have been killed? All the pages that she kept landing on weren't about a woman killed. They were about men being killed and not bodies being lost and then not being able to figure out where they are. So there were all these. I noticed that. I have to wonder might be other little kind of slow reveals that if you're paying enough attention and now know the backstory, that you would see how they were kind of letting you know ahead of time without actually saying anything. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see for sure.
Yeah, I think definitely. So, there's a lot of stuff in here that we've already hinted to that I think is theological and political. And let's spend a little bit more time talking about that. What do you say? Let's take a break and come back.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. You're joining us for our theopolitical segment of the show. So, Caleb, one of the things we start figuring out after the slow burn and we get into the kind of darker side of the story, we see very quickly that Jack is basically manipulating women by playing on their dreams and their desperation, and we realize quickly how deplorable he is, and I couldn't help but think of all the men that we see do that,
Yeah.
but maybe particularly because of the time we're in right now, how that plays out politically in the United States. I'm curious, do you see any of that theme being reflected in the current realities, particularly in the political world as we see elections coming up and all that kind of stuff? Was there anything that kind of spoke up for you there?
Yeah, so I think that this is probably the strongest point of the film is the misogyny and the manipulation that we see here. And so I mean, I think before I say anything about the political thing, I think we've certainly seen this in the entertainment industry a lot.
Right.
And I mean, this has of course made all kinds of news that sparked the Me Too movement and all this. And so I think the fact that she's kind of in the entertainment industry in the 1960s and Last Night in Soho speaks to the way that whole system works. But
Absolutely.
I think, yeah, we've also seen a lot of more like public misogyny in politics as well. I think especially when Trump came into politics and made it okay for people to say openly that that they don't think women can handle responsibility. Whenever Trump was campaigning against Hillary Clinton and didn't have any problems, using her gender as
a weapon.
Yeah, I think was something that really gave people a lot of permission. So I think we're seeing a lot more people being publicly misogynistic now than we have in decades, and it's still there, even though Trump isn't president anymore. Are you seeing it as well?
Well, absolutely.
In politics?
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that I couldn't stop making a connection between is Roe versus Wade, frankly, because what you got with Jack is a guy that's manipulating women essentially so that he can control their bodies and what they do with their bodies by basically forcing them into, like, if you want to be on stage, you're going to have to be with this guy, and you're going to have to go with this other guy, and I kept thinking about how much particularly the Republican Party has doubled down on the old white men's need to control women's body and be in charge of it. For me, it was glaring. It was absolutely glaring. And I mean, Jack could not be a more despicable character. He literally makes you sick to your stomach when you start seeing what he's doing and how it's getting played out. And it boggles my mind that we've got an entire political party who's doing this, and people aren't. Well, Hillary said they're deplorable. She was right. But we don't see a lot of people calling them out and saying, this makes me sick to my stomach. Why do you think that you have any right to control a woman's body and be in charge and use it in whatever way you think should be done? I mean, is that stretching it too much? I mean, that's what
I think I think you're right. The other interesting thing I think about the whole Roe v. Wade thing is that I don't think a lot of Republicans actually even care about abortion. When we're talking about people in Republican leadership, I think they see that as a tool to manipulate people into voting against themselves, because they've created this over the past several decades, this single issue voting platform where they get people, primarily like conservative Christians, to misinterpret scripture so that they think that they're morally obligated to vote for a candidate who is against abortion, even though they may have values that are against life in every other possible conceivable way, right? They're going to be against foreigners, which the Bible is, very clear on welcoming the stranger. They're going to be against actually taking care of that baby once it is born, because they want to cut the social programs. They're going to be the first to call those mothers who they force to have babies, people who are welfare queens, and then cutting welfare as they're doing it. It's all kinds of manipulation, but I think that they use this issue to really marginalize and people further and to exploit women.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah,
And that's the part I think you're completely right. And that's the part that really just confuses me because when we put it into one person in this
yeah,
show, Jack,
yeah,
who manipulates people to do things that aren't really for good for them and goes against anything they might have done before that. He uses their dreams, their high
yeah,
expectations, their high desires, their, and their desperation against
sure,
them. And
yeah,
we do. I have this visceral kind of reaction of how deplorable and what a terror. But somehow, when we port that to, the whole political party, it. I don't see a lot of people who are saying this just makes like
mm,
that is so deplorable. It's just like, well, they
yeah.
really shouldn't be doing that. We need to work hard to make sure that, blah, blah, blah.
That's
I mean,
true.
why isn't it more of a visceral kind of, this is like, this shouldn't be happening, and it's the worst. I get lost
I mean,
for
that's one of the
words
things.
because it upsets me that much.
I know. So this is one of the things I think is wrong with the modern Democratic Party in particular. Is
Yeah,
like the Republicans are fine with using every ounce of energy they have to defeat
yeah,
Democrats. I think Democrats have not found that visceral reaction,
right.
even other than maybe against Donald Trump. But
To a
but
degree, yeah.
but there are people in power who are just as bad as Donald
Right.
Trump, uh,
Oh yeah.
or and smarter. So
Which makes them a little more dangerous, right?
which makes him a little more dangerous. And so I think that I think that liberals have to stop fighting amongst ourselves and really have to organize to fight against this. A party that is really anti-intellectual, that is really anti marginalized folks, and is really just pro white people, money, and power. And so, I mean, that ought to be enough to make us mad, Mark. We ought to
it really
have
should
a
be.
visceral reaction
Yeah.
and be able to fight against them, organize against them.
Yeah, I agree. It really should. I am at a loss that I don't see it happening more in terms of more
Yeah.
people being so just ridiculously upset over what they're doing and how they're doing it, and particularly the way that they are treating folks who aren't white men. That we don't see a lot more energy from that being disgusted by it out there right now, getting people to vote and making sure that is not the way that this nation ends up getting ruled, because we could quickly go down a path where we do end up not just in the 1960s, but the 1950s and the 1940s and the 1930s. It could get really bad. And we don't want to, and that is one of the things that the grand old party actually does, is they idealize the way things used to be, when the reality is those things weren't great. There was some pretty horrible times. So
and that
there's a couple of times.
Mark, to me, that's one of the points of this movie too, is
Right.
that nostalgia is just seeing the past through rose-colored lenses, right? Because Ellie in the movie, she idealizes the 60s. She was never even there, and she idealizes what this time was like. There's that moment where she's talking to old Sandy, and she says, if I could live anywhere at any time, it would be in London in the 1960s. Right. But then she gets to experience London in the 1960s as this seedy, dirty place where Sandy is taken advantage of, and where there's this rampant misogyny. And I think this really speaks to the danger of, this past that we create. And there's one of the things I really appreciate about Buddhism is this notion that the past doesn't really even exist. That it's this created image in our mind, and it's skewed by every single person. And the future isn't here yet. The only moment we've got is this one. And I think there's some real power in not getting too stuck in the past, but recognizing that we've got to be here in this.
Oh, absolutely.
Moment.
And that's that nostalgic kind of desire that we tend to have is another thing that that the Republican Party are taking advantage of and playing off of. And I love that this show, it does try to show us in real terms that that nostalgic look that the way we think nostalgically of the past is frequently very wrong. And I wish we could figure out how to counter that message for them. Listen, before we just keep going down this rabbit hole, I want to back up a little bit. One of the things that is also a quiet theme in this movie is mental health. Her mother had mental health issues, and they contribute her committing suicide to some of those mental health issues. Ellie is definitely struggling. She talks about how she's been in a prison all of her life. I'm interested to see if you think something I saw might have been intentional, or if just me reading into things that aren't really there. I thought it was very interesting. The only time that we, at least until the very end, where, as you pointed out, there was lots going on, and there was like he reaches out and slaps her, and there was this physical exchange. We do see Ellie coming back after one of her first visits with a hickey on her neck, and I was already thinking that this was kind of an internal thing that was happening in her head in terms of her visiting the past. For me, that was like this brilliant kind of way of showing that how our insides, our internal worlds, impact our external beings as well, and how we don't always take that seriously enough. Do you think I was overreading that as a metaphor, or?
Maybe, but I like it. I mean, I think that makes it. I think that makes the point stronger, because I think they were trying to talk about mental illness, but I'm not sure we got anywhere real concrete on it, other than her mom died, and then whenever she's trying to talk about it with her classmates, there's a lot of kind of exploitation and making fun of her for that, and I think that they talk about the mental health in that way, kind of a commentary on that in that way. So I like your explanation, I think, better than the mental health that we get in the movie, and I think that's a stronger point than maybe the movie actually makes. So I think they should hire you, Mark, to say this is making a commentary on the way our inner lives affect us out in our external life.
I'm kind of with you. I do think that they lost a lot of opportunities to address not just any kind of mental issues, but also just how our internal lives do impact our outward life a lot more than we tend to think about. There was so many opportunities for them to do a better job talking about that. But maybe that the hickey can just be we'll just take that with us and redeem it as little bit as we can.
Because that's something, because I like that, because that's one of the moments too where the movie kind of fell apart for me.
Right.
Because is she observing Sandy? She seems to be at first, just looking in the mirror. Or is she Sandy? And she's
for a while there, you really couldn't. Yeah,
you really couldn't tell. So I like it, Mark. I think you have made sense of this for me.
I've certainly not made complete sense of it, but maybe we made a little advancement. Listen, we can keep talking about this, but we are running short on time, and we've got to get to our next segment. So we're going to take a quick drop and come back on the other side and see if we can make our co-host look stupid.
Yeah. Hey everyone, and welcome to our final segment of the Moonshine Jesus Show, the Make Me Look Stupid segment. It is last, but it is worth the wait, because it is such a fun segment. And I am not going to be benevolent to you, Mark. I'm going to ask my question right away, largely because you've helped me make sense of this movie, and I've got something that I need to know.
I don't know if I can help. We'll see.
So I'm still a little confused about
Okay.
Eloise's relation to Sandy, and
Yeah.
she has a strong connection with Sandy, I guess, because she's living in her house, and there's all these dead folks who are around her. So
Yeah.
at the end, Sandy has died in the fire in her house. And Eloise continues on with her life and finds success, it seems, in fashion school. And she is doing this kind of runway project. And it seems like she's kind of the star student, thanks in large part to Sandy, helping her find kind of that confidence. So the final scene, though, is Eloise looking in the mirror and seeing Sandy's reflection. But not like her mother's, where her mother is a separate entity, like if you were looking in a mirror, but as if she is Sandy. And then she
Right.
goes to the mirror and they both tap the mirror at the same time. Eloise on one side and Sandy on the other. So help me make sense of this, Mark. Are Eloise and Sandy the same person now, or is Sandy somehow psychically with Eloise?
Right.
What does that mean? That's what I want to know. What does the ending mean,
Yeah,
Mark?
I can't. It's a very good question because I don't really have
Yeah, I
much
know.
of an answer. To
Ah.
me, to me, there it's kind of wrapped up in a number of things. It's one was a message of we never fully escape our past. And so even though she's been successful, that we still have these moments where we see that the past is still impacting her. But in a lot of ways, that little tap to me felt like we don't always escape our past, but sometimes we learn to make peace with our past. As to whether they're the same person or I don't know, I'm with you. Maybe it's the psychic energy. She was there as Sandy was about to die, and so she absorbed some of that energy. I don't know.
It sounds thank you, Mark, for saying you don't know. I appreciate that. I think I think what we're really discovering is that the ending just didn't make any sense. I don't think it wasn't thought through real carefully. It just
Yeah.
is.
I think at the beginning when we were talking about it, and I talked about how I thought the incredible the filming was and the editing and the directing. You'll notice that I didn't say anything about the writing because
I did notice that.
Yeah, I kind of on the same page with you. There's a lot of you've got to work a little too hard to fill in the gaps and the holes in the story and what's really going on. One of the things that's going on that I wanted to ask you about was so. Are there any guys that don't come off at least part of the time as fully creepy?
Well, so two that I can think of that aren't.
Yeah, I
don't
think
come
I
off
might
as
know who they
fully
are, and I would
creepy.
disagree that in the
Wait,
storytelling.
let me give my answer first. Let's see.
Yeah,
Let's
okay.
see.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
So one is the guy who works in the bar with her, who warns her about Hansy, who we find out is the cop. He seems to be kind of supportive of Eloise, more so than the female bartender. And I was going to say her friend, but who she starts a romantic relationship with. But at the beginning, he is a little seedy. He is a little creepy because he's standing out there in what we assume is an all-female dorm, or at least I did assume was an all-female dorm, but then maybe isn't. And he seems less creepy as it goes along. So I don't know. What do you think, Mark?
Well, I do kind of think that guy's his name is John. I do kind of think that I didn't read him as creepy as just kind of like maybe socially out of touch, like not recognizing that what he's standing there is kind of weird in the particular. Because everything else we see from him, he really comes off as not just a good guy, like this incredibly. Like literally, she sneaks him into her bedroom, her rented room, where the strict rule of no men in the house, which is kind of funny because there are a lot of men in the house. It's dead, and old Sandy comes up and practically beats him to this just barely to death, almost to death. And then the next day he shows up at the library to help Eloise
That's
research. I was
that's
like,
true.
that is a
Yep.
really seriously good dude right there.
Yeah.
I just wondered if is the writing so bad and so cliche that he's supposed to represent the 1 in a million guy that's actually a decent person.
Maybe.
I don't know. What do you think? Do you think?
Maybe the 1 in a million guy she has found that's good in this world of misogyny, and
Right.
John's the guy. Yeah, maybe. Maybe.
Well,
It's that
for
bad.
me, it's almost they were very heavy-handed that almost every guy was a really horrible person, in some way, creepy and odd, and I love that we did have John. That there is this little bit of hope in there that there are folks who are good people, who have good intentions, and really care about everyone in the world, and doesn't try to use them or abuse them or that kind of thing. I found that a little hopeful.
Now, who'd you think I was gonna say?
I thought that you were going to say the old man, the silver-haired gentleman, because he ultimately, while they say he's handsy, we don't ever see him do that and that kind of thing. But they did. He ultimately should be seen as a good guy, but they set up as this creepy guy. He was the cop that was in the 60s trying to make sure that the women were okay as best as he could. And he continues even after he's retired to live in the area and try to be aware of particularly the younger women, and so that he knows if they're okay. But even he, in the way that the writers set this up, is made out to be this creepy old man.
Yes. Yeah, they really do pound that hard. They want you to think that that's Jack, and that there's a real threat for her life with this guy. Yeah, and he is I mean, he's a vice cop, and so he acts like a vice cop, and he's not he's set up as kind of shady too. I agree with you on it. It doesn't seem like a wonderful example to defeat male misogyny.
Well, there you go.
There you go. You know what? This has been a lot of fun, Mark. And we I think are going to leave next week as a surprise for what we're going to talk about. That way, you all can be just as surprised as we are. Maybe we'll let you know ahead of time, but
we'll think about it
for now. Yeah, we'll think about it. We'll think about it. But for now, it's been fun. Thanks, Mark. It's good to talk about last night in Soho with you. And thanks for joining us early, those of you who did. And cheers to you, Mark.
Cheers, sir.
To everyone else out there. See you next time on the Moonshine Jesus Show.
Moonshine